Welcome back to the channel, guys. Tundra and I are here to do a year predictive reading for astrology for Justin Baldoni and then do a tarot pull at the end. It was so popular. Everyone loved the reading I did for Blake. I thought, let's dive into Justin. I want to see what's going on. And I also want to see how it stacks up against Gene Keys. I know it was a little bit controversial to say that maybe he had operated a bit through his ego for the reasons he hired Blake. Hello, you're so sweet. And his motives behind It Ends With Us. It was a bit controversial. And I don't mean that as a slight against Justin. If we can't recognize our shadows, and if we can't recognize where we're making ego-driven decisions, we all do it, no matter how far along we are on the spiritual journey. In fact, I find it more concerning when clients are like, no, I'm perfect. I'm elevated above it all. I do not make any ego decisions. What are you talking about? I'm more concerned when clients have that mentality, when they're like, oh, willing to go into the shadows, willing to look at shadow patterns that are actually dictating the course of their decisions and their lives. 1 second, Tundra's getting into trouble. All right, situation is under control and we are back. So it's more concerning to me when we have someone that's completely unwilling to look at their shadow patterns and feels as though they don't have any because there's no spiritual growth there. And before we get started, because I feel like there might be some things that are a bit controversial, we're going to play the clip of Justin talking about how it was ego-led. He doesn't use those words, but that's exactly what he talks about. So let's do that first. This is something that I've played multiple times. This is Justin's interview with Rainn Wilson, Soul Bloom, episode 27. One of my favorite interviews with Justin because he's reflecting on the human experience and the mess of it and the learning and growth that comes from it. It's so real and honest of, yeah, I may have been making these decisions for the wrong reason, but let's just hear from his words before we get into this.
That's great. What next? Where next lies your journey? I've put so much energy into climbing the career ladder and to being enough in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, I think, over this last film that I couldn't, there's never been a way for me to separate my desire to be enough and to fit in this business with the projects that I make, because of course I made It Ends With Us and all these films for a very specific reason, but I also, wanted people to think I was a good director or a good actor, and I wanted my place in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And on that note, I was going to be shuffling cards, or I did shuffle cards, and I got a stack that literally flipped out as a stack. So we'll just go with that for his reading at the end. But he is talking about, of course, there's meaning behind why I picked these projects, but there was also this ego-led meaning as well.
That's enmeshed with all of it. And I think I've really learned over the course of the last 2 years that it really doesn't matter. And I've been able to, luckily, and it's never 100% pure, but I've really had the great fortune of being able to see that what I thought I wanted isn't what I wanted, and that I have everything.
And this is something that I really believe, whether a situation is fated for us or not, I genuinely don't believe in anything I've seen from the cards nor from the astrology that the way this situation played out in its dark shadow was meant for either of them. I more see, if I'm being honest, how this was meant to be fated, because if you watched my video on Blake Lively, I had said this was more meant to be her year. I really think more of the fated higher elevation piece of this would have been the growth that she could have experienced working with someone like Justin.
Thing that I want.
That's just my opinion.
And so my focus
from what
right
I
now
see in the
has
cards
been
and stars
to really show up as a father and as a husband
Amazing.
in ways that I wasn't before. And it's little things that nobody cares about, but the things that mean a lot to my wife and my kids. And then trying to be a good friend, showing up for my friends in ways that I've had many show up for me recently, you being one of them. Everything outside of the the world the public sees is what I'm focused on right now. And I am feeling so genuinely happy and joyful for the first time in a long time. Going to the
All right. So that I want to kind of provide the energetic frequency that we're operating within when we speak about ego, or when we speak about that self-obsession within the gene keys. It's not a slight against someone. And I think honestly, we struggle as a society these days to see our faults or our shadows not as a dagger to our heart, right? Not as a personal attack against us, but a window into our growth. And so that's just something to keep in the back of your mind as we go through this, or as you maybe go over the gene keys reading again. Another thing that I want to point out is when I'm doing a gene keys reading, an astrology reading, any of this, I put my personal feelings aside, what I agree with or disagree with aside, because what I see a lot of is like, well, I agree with this, but I disagree with that. I am a blank canvas reading the energy. And so I might disagree. And for those that have watched a lot of my astrology and tarot from earlier in the year, I'm like, I don't know. I don't agree with this. I don't agree with what I'm seeing. And you guys are like, no, this is right. Like, I can see how this would work. There was a lot that I saw or pulled that I was like, I don't necessarily agree with this, but I'm going to say it because it's what the cards say or it's what the stars are saying, but I don't really agree with it. Just because we read something doesn't mean we're meant to agree or disagree. It's just the energy. And because we are humans on a, energetic frequency of having free will, it doesn't mean certain things are going to play out the way that they're fated to or were meant to. And again, I think honestly, how this was all meant to play out with Justin Blake was more of a growth experience for her rather than a shadow experience. And so that also changed the course of Justin's experience. But anyway, we are going to pull up his chart. Oh, and if you wanted your own reading for this, you guys sold them out. So I opened up some more spots. There's a link. I don't have an official sales page for it because it's usually, this type of reading is usually only something I offer long-term clients. So we do it around their birthday, or it's usually something I only offer clients that I've worked with previously and they come back yearly to have this type of reading. But if you're interested, you think this is super cool and you want to explore it for yourself, you absolutely can. The link is in the show notes for you guys. All right, let's pull up his astrology for the year. We will start with secondary progression and then go into solar arc. All right, so a piece of the confusion I got on Blake's was people said, I thought her chart was different. I don't understand what's going on. It's meant to move. So the inner wheel that you're seeing here is Justin Baldoni's natal chart. The outer wheel is going to be the secondary progression. So there's two ways I do yearly readings or predictive readings for clients, and it's secondary progression and solar arc. Secondary progression is going to give you more of that inner journey and growth you're meant to go on over the next year. And solar arc is going to give those external events that you're going to go through in the next year. So I think it just gives a beautiful combination of both your internal and external growth. So just so everyone's clear, his chart is in the middle here. So I'm circling it right now. That's his chart. And then his natal chart, secondary progression, is the outside. So yes, everything is meant to move, but it's going to give you the frequency of that year and the experiences that he's meant to go on for that year. So everything's going to look a little bit different. All right. So I hope that helps us get our bearings, and let's just dive in. Okay. So when we're looking at the secondary progression for Justin Baldoni, I would say this upcoming year is a soul course correction. And there is elements of having gotten off track. I'm going to break it down for you, but I just want to look at it from the larger overview first. He got a bit off track. Who cares? Everyone gets off track. This is not a fault. It's not to make him feel bad. It's not to say he was, in the wrong or whatever. It's not. It's just, okay, fine. I got off track. How do I get back on track? How am I meant to live out this next year? Here's the thing, guys. I always want you to look at, and this is something I always encourage my clients to do too. Nothing has meaning until we give it meaning. So when we hear things like ego, we have like a certain meaning to it. If we hear things about, and we're all going to have our individual meaning of it. The word stress, we all have a very individual meaning of what stress is. So when we think of words in regards to, I see that as good or I see that as bad, just start to play with, well, nothing has meaning until I give it meaning. So why have I labeled this thing as negative? Getting off track isn't inherently negative. It was a learning experience. This is for sure when we're looking at his fifth house. So in the secondary progression, his fifth house is pretty empty. But in his natal chart, we have the Lilith Lilith, Black Moon Lilith, one of my favorites in Aquarius, conjunct his sun in Aquarius. So when we look at the kind of like inner battle throughout his life that he was set to be on, there is this battle, and he described it with Rainn Wilson, between ego and art, and this intertwine, almost like this darkness, the Lilith darkness piece. And even, I mean, the Scorpio moon in his natal chart conjunct Pluto, there is like this darkness, this like rough around the edges, if you will. But when we're looking at the Lilith and moon, it 100% a struggle in his life would have been the intertwined aspect of ego and art. And part of his soul journey is like pulling those threads apart and figuring out his unique path within that. Ego's not bad. Actually, I'm going to give you guys an example of how it's broken down in gene keys. So we have the water eye and the fire eye within us. We all do. So the water eye is going to be intuition and soul. It's going to be following your inner sense of knowing rather than the mind. And then the fire eye is what allows us to accomplish things in life. So it's going to be, because of the fire eye, that drive, that ego, that adrenaline, that pressure, we create things. We've created skyscrapers and buildings and institutions, et cetera, et cetera. So that fire eye is our drive. What a lot of people do is they live with the fire eye above the water eye. So that drive takes precedence, or takes priority, over intuition and soul. And so they live with the fire eye first, and then they wonder why they're out of alignment. They wonder why, especially for those soul-led beings, wonder why things aren't flowing, wondering why they have health issues, wondering why they feel empty despite their success, wondering why they feel like there's got to be something more, even though it appears they have all of the more you could ever want in life. And it's because the fire eye comes before the water eye. And other people kind of flip-flop. And I think that's what happened with Justin with It Ends With Us, is he flip-flopped. He was leading with the water eye above the fire eye, kind of flip-flopped, and the fire eye became on top of the water eye, which is what set this in motion. When we live with the water eye above the fire eye, intuition and soul comes first. Trusting your inner knowing comes first. So it's not about, how do I get seen as a good director? How do I get seen as a good actor? How do I have a seat at the table with my peers? That's your fire eye. It's, I'm doing this for the art. I'm doing this because I'm called. I'm doing this for no other meaning than it's just this inner knowing that it's my right path and that I have absolutely nothing to prove. And then when we make decisions from that place, human design, it's called making decisions from inner authority. Gene keys, it's all about coming into the city or the gift. Alignment is another word we use. Purpose is another word we use. There's still the drive, right? The fire eye is still there. It's just, what is your ego and what is your drive in service to? So you make the decision from soul, you make the decision from intuition, from higher knowing, from higher purpose, from something that is not tangible. You make the decision from there, and then you use your drive, you use that ego to bring it to life. Ego's not bad. You don't want a complete death of the ego. It's, what is your drive in service to? What is that fire in service to? Is it in service to the mind, who you think you should be, what you think you should do? Or is it in service to the soul, what your higher purpose actually is? So I hope that gives a little bit of clarity there. However, what we're seeing is kind of this internal pivot. So we went from the Lilith sun energy of that back and forth intertwined of art and power, that intertwine of creativity and soul, with ego and climbing the social ladder, is actually the words he used. But we're moving into a different era with him now. And this, when we're looking at the sun, progressed sun into Pisces, 6th house. Now, this energy is going to be a lot more, especially conjunct Mercury, dissolving the old ego story. Now, I've used this quote a long time ago to describe Mercury and Pisces in a secondary progression. And I'm probably going to butcher her last name, but Emily Bronte. once said, and I'm just going to read the quote here, "I've dreamed in my life, dreams that have stayed with me ever after and changed my ideas. They've gone through and through me like wine through water and altered the color of my mind." So what this energy, Mercury and Pisces, in a secondary progression chart is very much, it's your time to go back to the dream. It's your time to go back to that inner knowing. It's your time to come back to what does it mean for you to be in integrity, not to perform, not to prove, but to serve. And that's the energy that he's really moving into this year, is he has like that progressed sun, that progressed Mercury is that's an old struggle. Now we can have to not, we don't learn from our struggles sometimes, so we go through them over and over and over and over, and we're trying to learn the lesson within it over and over again, and we just don't learn it. But he has an opportunity right now to really come back into truth on, well, what's the dream? This is an energy of exploring the creativity and artistic side of his nature. It can be art, meditation, theater, painting, being in nature more, philanthropic work. I don't know why words are so hard for me today, but it can be this new kind of evolution, but it's not completely new. It's coming back to his roots. It's coming back to his soul. It's coming back to what was true before he started to want to prove himself, before he wanted to be seen in a certain way and taken in a certain way. The sun in Pisces is going to be this softening, more spiritual, more artistic bend. So I don't necessarily see him as leaving Hollywood necessarily with this. This is the internal evolution. Remember, secondary progression is internal. I see him more coming back to what projects are important to me. If I strip away, remember we said this in Gene Keys, if I strip away all of the should, need, have to, all of it, what's left? Now, this is going to be really important, is coming back to the creative piece, because we're going to see health issues. We're going to see issues in terms of work, daily routine, if he's out of alignment. So health issues are going to be really big here. When we're also looking at this energy, I would, if he was a client of mine, be shifting him from, how do I prove I'm good? Right? So it ends with us. You said, I was trying to prove myself, to prove that I could fit in, that prove I was a good actor, climbing the social ladder. But how do I embody more creativity and soul through simplicity and creativity? Through simplicity. How do I come back to the simple things that are important to me? And he talks about that as well in the interview with Rainn Wilson, where he says, like, family, his kids, being a father, things that are outside the public eye is what he's focusing on. So I think he's really feeling this energy of simplicity, creativity, the art, what's important to me. And that progressed Mercury as well. I almost feel more of a poetic energy, rewriting of the inner monologue. It'll be interesting to see what comes through that. But yeah, I would say that inner world is coming back to the dream within the dream. Like, what was the ultimate dream? Besides what he said in the interview with Rainn Wilson. Another place that I actually want to look at before we move on to the moon. I just caught it here out of the corner of my eye. Venus. When we're looking at Venus here in this placement for his secondary progression, this can be a really big moment for softening artistic nuance and almost becoming like, it screams heart-centered values and leadership, especially conjunct Pallas Athena here. Heart-centered values, heart-centered leadership, and almost a more approachable energy. The values are shifting. His values are shifting. And what leadership means to him is shifting on an internal level. And you might say, like, he's always been approachable. What are you talking about? I think in many ways, the brand he built wasn't approachable for many people. He was building definitely a new view on masculinity. And I think in many ways, this is just from me being in the spiritual industry for a long time, it can be a little bit off-putting for some people. And I think for this, when we're looking at the leadership with Venus in the 6th house, there is a softening around the branding. There is a softening around the language, which is more approachable for the every person. And I just see him, like the imagery I come into mind with, and this is not a slight on his brand. It's not a slight on Man Enough, any of that. It's a softening into it. It's a little bit more of an approachability within it. And it's this energy that's moving from, like, Pallas Athena is going to be strategic leadership, not so much strategic logical leadership. If I do this thing, I'll be seen. If I take on this movie, I'll have a box office hit. If I act in this or direct in this, then I'll be accepted and I can climb the social ladder. That's more of that strategic Pallas Athena. We're moving from that energy into, I want to live a life that I love and love what I do. And so how can I live that, embody it, and then just create that energetic frequency around me? And this position as well is, when we're looking at Venus, values, beauty, aesthetics is usually what we think of. It's not like this drowning in beauty, right? Like all of a sudden he's just got to like be around like luxurious things and beautiful things. That's not what it is. It's, again, the simplicity within leadership, the simplicity in how he spends his days. No longer being seen as a person who is leading from above, but leading from beside. So it's more of that natural role model, leading based on what he truly values. Again, we're going to see like this quiet energy, this consistency that pulls through the threads from his previous brand, from Man Enough. But I do think we're going to see not a rebrand as in a strategic rebrand, right? Because again, we have Venus with Pallas Athena. I don't think it's going to be like a strategic, like, if I do this thing, then I'm going to, finally bust through. And no, it's not performative. It's not performative power. It's rooted power. Power in the sense of simplicity. Power in the sense of coming back to what's important to you. That's where the power is. Now, when we look at the moon, you also want to look at the moon and secondary progressions. Moon in Aries is very interesting. It is all about striking out on your own, believing in yourself, in what way? His values, his own embodied, rooted leadership, not performative. What's important to me, and allowing that to lead, the simplicity and following soul, the simplicity and following his heart, the simplicity and coming back to really what at the end of the day matters more than anything. So even family, we're going to see that, especially in his solar arc. I had a quick look before I came on. We're going to see that a lot. Family is very important in this new phase for him. But this, when we're looking at the moon here, especially in Aries, it's reflecting on a period of your life. So there's going to be, over the next year, so his birthday was in January, throughout 2025, there's going to be a lot of reflecting, not from regret, not from beating himself up, but just reflecting on the past, but also long-held beliefs and relationships he had in the past, and now kind of starting on a new clear path forward and aligning himself, focusing himself on the right people. There might have been a little bit of a focus previously on, again, other people's needs so that he's seen in a certain way, or relying on others. So for example, maybe he did, this might be triggering for people, but maybe he did really admire, he said he admired, I can't remember the exact words, but admired Ryan. Maybe he did admire him and like the success he's had. He said he committed so much time to climbing the social ladder, the career ladder. And even Ryan as the archetype, it doesn't have to be Ryan himself, but just that sense of admiring those that have really made it in the industry, really made it as actors and directors. But here it's like, nope, I'm rooting back in me. It's an energetic independence, a leading from integrity, a leading from values once again. Now, this movement of the moon as well is like he was living in someone's shadow. And maybe it is, how we interpret it, living in someone's shadow in this last phase. We could maybe look at the shadow of the lawsuit as something more archetypal than an individual. But if he stays true to his inner knowledge, if he finds the real sense of what freedom means to him and independence means to him, he's going to leave that behind. But it is critically important that he is focusing on, not neglecting. So it's not that he's neglecting others' needs and wants, but he has to focus on himself in this year, 2025. up until his birthday in 2026. He has to focus on himself. And it's that energy of, and again, it's not now ignore your family. It's that energy of like, you have to fill your own cup. You know, what's the saying? If the plane's going down, you have to put on your mask first before you put it on anyone else. That's the energy he's moving into. It's not relying on others to fulfill your life goals. It's not relying on others to make yourself feel worthy or good enough. It's, I am inherently good enough. I am inherently successful because I am me, right? Remember we talked about gene keys and it's all about being. And I said, who are you below it all? His higher purpose and the city for him is simply being. And that's one of the hardest concepts for any of us to get to spiritually or intellectually, because how do you just be? And I want you to kind of sit with that for a moment, because how do you just be without labels? How do you be without the the branding, the baggage, if you will, of every decision you've made, the brand you've had previously, what you've done previously, your beliefs, your identities? And it's a tough concept. And that's kind of what's being asked of him in 2025. It's this existential question almost, who am I if I stop performing for approval? Or who am I if I stop performing? That might even be a better way to look at it. The existential question of beingness. Well, who am I if I stop performing? And I don't mean stop in movies. I don't mean stop being a director. There is, and I think this is where some people have a hard time digesting the Man Enough brand, is a very strong brand. And I think sometimes you can almost look when brands get really strong like that, people can get a sense of like, is there a performance here? Is there an authenticity here? Those of us that have followed Justin know it's not true. But I'd almost love to see him. Okay, now I'm just feeling into this. I'd almost love to see him like more talking from your heart in regards to what it means without jargon. So what happens a lot is, especially when someone's trying to explain things to other people, is they get into a lot of like jargon around it. What if you just spoke from your heart? What if you're just being and speaking from the heart on what you believe? What comes with you and what's left behind? It'd be interesting to see. The 8th house for the moon as well, lots of change. The one thing that's certain for him in the next year is lots of change. This can signal an emotional rut, the moon here, like an internal emotional rut. I have no doubt that he's feeling an emotional rut right now, but it's also like you have an opportunity within the next year to look at and discard outdated habits and projects and kind of clean house. I would genuinely have him clean. Like, what is in your wallet? What is in your cupboards? What is in your fridge? What is in your house? What is in your garage that needs to go? Like, it's not just an internal, but an external cleaning out. Like, make space for what's to come. But this is an energy of a lot of potential feeling of being in a rut. And I imagine, I'm just sitting with this right now, I imagine that would feel like, for someone that like Justin, I imagine just having to sit back and not say anything can be really difficult. And that might also cause a feeling of an emotional rut. But it's all about truth, freedom, and critically important friends and family that support him, surrounding himself with that. But I would say he's feeling an emotional rut, reflecting on the last year. It is a new phase. So his birthday next year, 2026, is going to be a completely new phase for him. And how do you break out of that? With leaving, and I would be challenging him. It's beingness in this next phase. It's beingness. So how do we go more? And he'd be so much fun to work with because he is so spiritual as it is. How do you go deeper into who am I if I'm just being? Who am I if I stop performing? And as an extension of that, I actually said this to a client the other day. As an extension of that, what are the projects you're taking on? As an extension of that, how are you showing up? As an extension of that, what are you creating? But it's an extension of, first and foremost, being grounded in who am I if I stop performing? Who am I if I am just being and I let go of every single label that I've created around myself? And this is a problem that so many people are walking around with, like, just all these labels that keep them boxed in. I'm a good person. I'm loyal. I'm strong. I'm confident. And then even bad ones. I'm someone that struggles with eating healthy, like whatever, right? I love must sweets. But we walk around with all these labels, and all labels do is put you into a box. And they create this dogmatic way of thinking that is not conducive to growth. So again, I'd be challenging him on the inner realm, the secondary progression. It's going back to simplicity, creativity, inner values of leadership, and grounded in those inner values of leadership. And from the moon, reflecting on, it's kind of something I say to my clients all the time. What's working, what's not, what can you do differently next time? But more from a contemplative place. I'd be going at more of a Gene Keys place with him for this. This is where I would actually long-term coaching with someone pull in Gene Keys, because it is more contemplative. It is more going on the journey. But from that place, from that contemplative place, how do we get you into the gift or the city? And it's going to be a little bit more of like hermit mode, if you will, which is interesting because we kept pulling the hermit for him earlier this year for Justin. And it's very much hermit mode for him. All right, let's flip over to, but I would say I'm rebranding from the inside out. If I had to give it one, rebranding from the inside out would be my one sentence of the inner world that's going on for Justin. Now let's flip over to solar arc, which is going to be more of the external events. All right, so same concept, my friends. We have Justin Baldoni's natal chart on the inside, and we have his solar arc on the outside ring. So you can see there's two rings here. The solar arc is going to be those external events. Now, the first thing that honestly really catches my family is going to be big for him. And he said that himself in the Rainn Wilson interview. Family is big for him. First thing that really stands out for me is we have the moon and we have Mars. Both of these planetary bodies are in Sagittarius in the 4th house with Saturn. Now, this is 4th house is family. I would say, okay, 4th house, especially for Saturn, family is going to become a safe haven for him. Security can be found in the family network, kind of like within the brick and mortar of the home, if you will. I almost wonder if they're going to have a baby in the next year. I wondered that in with his moon placement and secondary progression. It's kind of got like child energy, home energy. Actually, his moon as well in the 8th house from the secondary progression could also have death and rebirth energy as well, which is where I got the child feeling, the death and rebirth energy. I don't know. Maybe they are going to have a baby, but either way, the external event could be a baby, but it is the external event when we're looking at Saturn 4th house. It is going to be like the foundations of the home are going to be number one for him. Now, the issue with this also becomes is he can't really do much publicly, but I don't think it would change regardless. I think even if his team was like, whatever, go hog wild, like do all the interviews you want, kind of like Karen Reed's doing all those interviews when it's probably not the best idea. I mean, you can do it, go ahead. We don't recommend it. And if he went rogue and still did the interviews, and they said it was okay, I still don't think he would, because external events is all about home and family, security, building the foundations, like literally from brick and mortar of the home. It's physically in the home, working from home. There's also in the 4th house here is foundations in terms of clarity and authority. So there's that leadership again, but I see this as more of gaining clarity on who he is within the home first. I really don't see a whole hell of a lot over the next year, even if his team said that he could, to be honest. I just don't see it. With Mars here in his solar arc, yeah, previous events were a source of conflict, so you're focusing on the home. It is this lighter heart. So when we're looking at the Saturn Mars energy in Sagittarius in his solar arc. So I would say this. Ultimately, you're looking at the bigger picture. What matters most to you? Foundations for him, number one priority are going to be family, home, being a father, being a husband, those closest to him, the things that aren't sexy to the public. That's going to be number one. But then number two, from this perspective of gaining clarity and groundedness and authority of your own life from the home first, now what are we looking at in terms of the projects you take on? So you're going to have more of this like above it all view. Now, what does it mean to take on grounded projects, aligned projects? This can really like Mars, Sagittarius, especially with the energy of the moon, the conjunction with the moon, conjunction of natal Venus, values changing. This would signify typically change of projects. But again, I just don't. If I didn't know what he was going through, or if he wasn't going through the lawsuit, I'd be like, likely he's going to have a change of direction, like a new type of, maybe even moving. Actually, he did move. Scratch that. He did move. He moved to Hawaii. So there you go. Change of direction. He moved to Hawaii. So that's in alignment with the Mars in the fourth house, but also change of direction in terms of projects. I honestly think that he's just going to be coming back home to what mattered to him, to be honest, is what I'm seeing here. But it's all going to be home first. So again, and I know that drive and that back and forth between the ego and intuition, the water eye and the fire eye, all too well myself. And sometimes career, unwittingly becomes more important, not realizing it, over home and family. So what I see here in terms of external events is first, it's always going to come through the lens of family. And then the creative projects are going to be an extension of the foundations he's built and what's most important to him. The moon as well in the fourth house. Yeah, it's oof, letting go externally of the past and old projects. When's the trial? It's in 2026. I feel like there's a lot of tension going on because this is like, I need the energy internally and externally that he's meant to be moving into this year is let go of shit. Let go of the shit that doesn't serve. Let go of the projects, the thinking, the people that caused problems for you. Like, let it go. That is the energy internally and externally that his soul and life is meant to be taking this year, but he's kind of stuck in limbo. So I imagine there is a little bit of struggle within that because he is someone that's very spiritually attuned. And I imagine he can feel that, like, I just want to get it over with. I just want to be done with this. Like, I'm being called into other things. I've had the wake up call. Thank you, universe. I see where I went wrong. Like, now I want to shift. I wonder if he's going to take on a project almost like ghostwriting, or he's not outwardly involved. I would almost say that might happen in the next year, where he's not outwardly involved, but he does feel that like drive to move forward with something. I wouldn't be overly surprised with that. But yes, I would say death and rebirth, death of identity. It can be like more esoteric, or it can be, rebirth of a baby, having a baby, grounding into the home. That Saturn leaves you alone as long as you're on track. So Saturn's going to leave him alone as long as he's on track. How's he going to be on track? Family first. What fucking matters most to you? What matters most to you? Who are you when you are just being, when you are not being performative? This is stuff I even said in the Gene Keys, right? This is like, this year is big for him on this. And it just is, and that's okay. But family, home, identity, roots, it's going to be things that are playing out outside of the public eye. But that's what he said as well, that he was going for right now and what his realization was. So it's in alignment. I feel like he's probably very attuned to this. Chiron moved to the 10th house for his solar arc. So Chiron's going to be your wounded healer, but I kind of like to look at it more as your golden healer, core wound expression. 10th house is going to be your legacy, your career, public status, and Cancer. It's going to be fatherly, protective, nurturing. I honestly think, again, family's coming first. Family's coming first in the next year. I do foresee him maybe having like a ghostwriter or like the projects that he's not very outwardly attached to, because I feel like he's someone that's very creative, maybe even, charities he's attached to, but I see him working on some things that are really tied to his values with the natal Venus there. I don't know if he can really just sit for a year, but family's going to come first. That's his priority. And I think what you're going to see is the external events is family first, fixing the home, foundations in the home, and then from that grounded place, starting to take on projects, whether it's actually spoken about or not. All right. Where else do we want to look? Let's look here. So the ascendant, the solar arc, like I say, I do this like pretty much, even if it's a pre-recorded, pretty much live with you guys. I have a quick look before I go, make sure the time and everything is right. The ascendant, solar arc ascendant, is conjunct with his natal Pluto, natal moon in the second house. So ascendant, what we're going to be looking at here, how the world sees you, public identity. Pluto's going to have that power, control, shadows, moon, emotions. Second house is values, money, and worth. It's almost this question of you've been stripped down to like your rawest values. Again, what I keep saying is who are you without all of it? Without climbing the career ladder, without doing things to be accepted. It's soul now, forward, or nothing at all. So I feel as though outwardly there's going to be a bit of a shift in his brand. I think he's going to be a bit quiet on the projects he takes on for now. My gosh, I'm overheating. It is too warm. Like summer, you're going to see me with like, my hair won't be done much. I can't wear makeup. My hair, I cannot straighten it in the summer. Humidity just doesn't work. And I break out with makeup on once it's hot out. So, we're just going to be totally aesthetic change in the summer. But yes, I would say it's kind of this reckoning of not doing things for necessarily money or external worth or value or control even, right? Pluto, control. How do I control things? How do I control how people see me? How do I control my career and climbing the corporate ladder? No, it's stripping it all back. Again, I think what we're going to see is coming back to projects that really matter, whether it's a box office hit or not, whether it earns him like the biggest director in the world title or not. It's stripping shit back. Pluto, third house. And we have Pluto with the natal south node. We also have Pluto. It's a little bit, south node is retrograde. Uranus, Sagittarius as well. So the natal Uranus, natal south node with his solar arc Pluto, if you can keep all that straight. Yeah, guys, I think there's a big change coming for him. I also think so externally, a big change in how he communicates moving forward. This does also, and it could relate to, now this would have started so it would have started January 24th, so his birthday. And I can't remember when, it would have been December last year. So that makes sense. Just thinking of the timeline in my head, because it can also be Pluto in this house, in this energy of like old text messages or communications leaking, public backlash intensifying. But if we kind of go backwards, that this would have started January, but the energetic frequency would have been starting in the months before that. Yeah, makes sense then. If we're looking at old text communication leaking, public backlash, for sure, that adds up with Pluto there. And then power being stripped from the message until it's rebuilt with integrity. So that I feel as though, this feeling of everything I stood for people are twisting it. People are making it mean something it doesn't or was never meant to mean. How do I rebuild it? But yes, this could also mean, because we're only in April, guys. He's got until January to go. Could also mean more is going to be leaked. I don't think she has a shit ton, but I think what we might see, my opinion, because with this in third house, I don't think we're done seeing leaks of communication or old texts. I'm wondering Liz Plank's role in all of this. I wonder if she has second guessed it after everything came out about it, but I feel like there's still a betrayal coming externally. There's still another betrayal or a deeper betrayal than what we initially had perceived. I think, yeah. I don't think we're done with leaks. And I don't really feel that it's Blake, to be honest, because I feel if she had something, she would have put it out. Something from the past, retrograde South Node being exposed. I don't know why I get the feeling here Liz Plank's involved. And I also get the feeling that she's had what's the word I'm looking for? She's questioned herself. Something was going to come out, and that's why Blake had like the quotes. Remember, Blake had the quotes in one of her legal documents. I can't keep all the legal documents straight, but it was like quoted that someone said this rather than text messages. I almost feel that Blake was certain people were going to provide her with things that supported her, and then they backtracked. And that kind of feels that Pluto energy. Someone was going to expose something else, but then backtracked. All right. External. So I would say, just summarizing the external for him. Number one, family is going to be his focus and should be his focus. If this is my client, I'd be like, you prioritize the family. You spent that time climbing the social ladder. What's important to you? Build the foundations in the home first, and then allow career to be a natural extension of your values and what's true for you. Exploring maybe ghostwriting, projects where his name isn't really outwardly big, flashy, but he's still involved. And then I do think we're going to see a bit of a rebrand when he comes back. If I was to look at and say now through early 2026, my prediction is based off of this. He's taking a low profile, no major roles. I don't think his legal team would advise him anyway. Not really public statements through him. They'll come through Brian Freeman, and no outwardly new creative ventures, but a lot of inner work. That's what we saw. A lot of inner work of coming back to what creativity means to him and simplicity means to him. This is kind of the image I get, I think, in images, is an artist that was painting things that the world wanted them to paint, and now they're painting at home things that they love. That's the sense I get. So it's going to start in the home, and then it's going to come outward. So maybe he's writing something in the next year and coming up with things that are more true to his values and his form of leadership moving forward. And we're going to see them in 2026. Now, the progressed Sun and Mercury, dissolving, dreaming, reimagining, but not acting on it yet. Pisces, especially when we combine the two energies of the progressed secondary progression with the solar arc, Pisces is ocean mode. Like, it's like feeling and being in it and dreaming and intuition and playing and fun. It's dreaming mode. It's living in the dream, living in the space between particles, not necessarily hustle or action. So I do think, what would I say based off this 2026? His birthday's the end of January. I do predict a payout based off of this. Not necessarily before his birthday. And I don't know why I hesitate on that, because I keep getting this feeling that someone's going to offer him a payout. I don't know who it is. I don't necessarily think it's Blake or Ryan, but I just get a feeling that someone is offering him one, but he's not taking it, which good for you. But I do see a payout. in 2026. And that really, like him backing up what he said to Rainn Wilson. It's not what he thought he wanted, isn't what he wanted anymore. Kind of over it. Cutting cords, progressed moon. We had Aries 8th house, cutting cords with old identities. Venus energy, ascendant energy, rebuilding based on values, priorities, pivoting more with family. I would almost see like more independent film, right? Like It Ends With Us was meant to be like a blockbuster at the end of the day. Let's be honest. It was. I see him more pivoting with like these independent films, spiritual work, or even like behind, I don't know why behind the scenes mentoring comes up, maybe within the Baha'i faith, maybe, but behind the scenes mentoring comes up. And kind of this divorcing from the image or divorcing from Hollywood, the Hollywood image of Justin Baldoni. Like divorcing from that image, that overly, because he is very polished brand, whether you want to admit it or not, is a very polished man enough brand. I think he's going to divorce from that a bit. Not that his values change in terms of man enough, but just it's going to be a different energy. Yeah, that's what I see. All right, let's our stack of cards that fell out of the deck. Let's have a look at what's going on there. Now, one thing I want to say about this is because I get people inevitably that are like, no, this is what that means, and this is what that means. What I'm working with this deck is the Weaver Tarot. So I don't like working within dogmatic thinking or boxes. And so I don't work with a lot of traditional tarot decks. When we're looking at the Weaver Tarot, this is the Journeyer edition. It's more based on archetypal meaning and archetypal systems, intuitive readings, and shadow integration. So it has different meanings, even though it follows the traditional deck system, it has different meanings. So when we're looking at the Weaver Tarot, you're not meant to read it like a traditional tarot deck, like old school tarot deck. You're not meant to. So, I'll pull the Hermit and someone will be like, that's wrong. And this is what it's supposed to mean. It's archetypal. If you haven't figured it out yet, I love archetypes. I love archetypal psychology. And that is really what the Weaver deck is all about. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that because I often get people tell me I'm reading it wrong. I'm like, I am not reading it wrong. And it's more intuitive readings based on archetypal systems. All right, you guys ready for this? This literally just fell out of the deck, just a stack. So we're just going to read it as it fell out. I'm not even going to, actually I did pull two other ones as he was going with the interview with Rainn, and it's separate from Strength in the World. So for Strength in the World and what that means in terms of his insights that he gave on Rainn Wilson is the inner strength to look at how the world sees him and how he sees the world and what's actually important to him. So that goes right in alignment with everything we saw and everything we read in terms of his progression and solar arc. All right, the pillar. Number 1, this is going to be, yes, your inner knowledge, but when we're looking at it in terms of the Weaver deck and the overall arc of the archetypal energies that are at play here, it's like listen to your intuition, become the pillar. This is what we just talked about, but also surround yourself with those people that are a pillar to you, family, friends that are important. We saw that within brick and mortar of the home. It's a cleaning house. We already talked about that. Get rid of the shit that is holding you back. Legit clean your house. Clean your house in terms of your identities, your systems, your beliefs internally that have been boxing you in. What truths do you stand for? How many times has this come up with Justin in the last week? What truths do you stand for when everything else falls apart? When everything is stripped away from you? And I really believe that when we see this, the pillar, he's re-anchoring back into what actually mattered to him. What are the inherited belief systems from Hollywood? What are the Hollywood idea of success? masculinity, social media, all of that. What does that mean and who are you? You're not borrowing an identity anymore from Hollywood or from even your own brand. Anchor into you, the Magi. Light and shadows in balance, finally. It's about embodied creation, the full spectrum of truth. And it's also when I pull the Magi, for me, it always also represents kind of surrounding himself with the magician. I would say Brian Friedman. You're asking me the archetypal meaning of that. I would definitely say truth, fighter of truth, the magician, Brian Friedman. But it is also ultimately radical self honesty. Where have the scales of justice internally been out of balance? You know, it's not about using charisma or intellect or the brand, leaning on the brand or any of that to get to evolve past and learn from this experience. It's going to be messy, it's going to be real, but radical self honesty where you've been out of balance and coming into that balance again. This year, like this is everything that we've just read in his astrology. Anchoring back into who you are. Who are you? It reminds me of like the Notebook, right? Like that scene with Noah and Allie when it's like, what do you want? What do you want? That's also what the stars are kind of asking of Justin this year. Like, what do you want? Well, you know, if I do this and I'll no, what do you want? Well, you know, if I do these kinds of movies, I'll be no, what do you want on a soul level? Cut the bullshit. Cut brand Justin. Cut brand man enough. Cut brand everything. What do you want? And he has the tools with this energy to create it for himself. We saw that his charts, especially the moon and the secondary progression, very independent. Doesn't mean that you get rid of family. He's anchored in a family, but you got to put your oxygen mask on first. There is a potential for a lot of transformation within this new era for him. 3 of coins upright. There we go. It's the right allies. You know, I've said this over and over again. It's the right allies, not enablers, not yes men, not yes women, people that are willing. And this is the problem too in Hollywood. Whether people think you're a good person or a bad person or whatever, right? Like, it's just yes men. Like he needs someone calling him out on his shit. And I'm sure his wife does that. She's probably also one of the pillars in his life. But he needs people calling him out on his shit. Like I'd have a spiritual guide or something or a coach or whatever, whoever that's willing to call him out on his shit. You need real allies. A lot of this is like the disintegrating of his old image. I think we're going to see not necessarily different Justin, but a more like embodied Justin. Not that I think he's been performative. We all are integrating every step of the way. We're always in a growth cycle. We're always learning and shedding identities and becoming someone new. I always say to my clients, you're either growing and expanding or contracting and dying. Nothing in nature is stagnant. Nothing in nature is stagnant. If I put a bucket of water outside, I know it's because we have a farm with a lot of animals. If I put a bucket of water outside and I let it sit there in the sun, it looks stagnant, right? Well, no, because something's either growing, expanding, or dying in it. The algae bloom is expanding and the oxygen is dying within it. You know, if you have a flow of the rivers running, it's healthy. You throw a tree down in front of it and it becomes stagnant. Well, now it becomes toxic, the water. A tree is growing, growing, growing until one day that beautiful 300-year-old tree. We have lots of beautiful trees on our property, but we also have these beautiful old trees that one day they fall over and die. So what I really see for him is not because he was performative, not because that brand wasn't in alignment for him, but he's embodied it in a new way. He's integrated the work in a new way. And this trouble time that he's gone through has helped him with that. So again, it's like not based off his past image. It's not based off of who he thought he was, especially with Venus, his Venus energy in the solar arc, the ascendant energy, Venus energy in his secondary progression, ascendant energy in the solar arc, crafting something new collaborations, not yes men, not all old identities, false identities are falling. The moon reversed. his exposure. Now, this is really interesting. The things he feared that would ruin him are the very things that are going to free him. And so in this new era, I think the very things he thought would ruin him in the terms of like having the Blakes and the Ryans come for him, or not be accepted at the table, or not being seen as good enough, it's actually going to free him. It's not about what people think, but what he's been hiding from himself. And in his interview with Rainn Wilson, he really talks about that. He exposes it. The illusions have been breaking. Like, what I thought I wanted isn't what I wanted. The secrets are coming out and they're damn uncomfortable and they can be disorienting. But stop hiding from those curated perceptions. What do you want? Who are you? We see this with the Pluto energy in both of his charts, the Lilith energy in both the charts. The mask is dropping. Things are being exposed, but within the exposure is the freedom. So something I'd be working with him on is, I can't imagine how it is to have to go through all of this in the public eye and then also not be able to say anything. But how can we see the freedom within the exposure? Oof, the anchor. He got the pillar and the anchor. Oof. Stability, foundation, staying power. Pillar and the anchor. I think when we go back to especially the astrology, family being anchored into his identity, the simplicity of things. Again, like this is all stripping away. Watch the Gene Keys call or video again after watching this. It's a stripping away of everything. Like raw, naked, stripping away. It reminds me of, from the divine feminine perspective, Goddess Inanna. And she goes through the 7 gates of hell all the way down. And so Goddess Inanna, if we're looking at from the divine feminine, at each gate, she had to release something, like a worldly possession that she was attached to. So her jewels, for example. I feel like that's really what he's going through in 2025. It's like the 7 gates of exposing what he was attached to that isn't really of soul, isn't really his, and moving towards more of a rooted lifestyle. It's funny because a lot of his energy, even in the astrology, talks about like off grid. And I thought that was more of, I took that more of like taking time away from Hollywood because of the legal proceedings. But it almost, when we pull the anchor with the pillar, I think he's coming back to more of a rooted lifestyle, like actually maybe off grid. I don't foresee a lot of LA Hollywood living within this, to be honest. The hermit, we always know archetypal energy. That has been Justin from day one. Whenever we pull the hermit, it's been him. It's been what represents him. Now, it's not just solitude with the hermit. It's not just like this hiding because he has to legally or anything like that. It's sacred isolation. It's a conscious pulling away to become whole. And his hermit for most of the year up till April, this point, was reversed and it's been upright. Whenever we pull it, it's been upright. Again, off grid, away. He's been in Hawaii. He's been off grid in Hawaii. Yeah, he's meant to be off grid. He's meant to be away. I actually want to pull from one of my other decks. Where is it though? I don't know where it is. One of my Oracle decks. I'll see if I can find it. Even if he hadn't already left for Hawaii, I'd be like, you got to go. Get out. Get the F out of LA. Go. Death. Death isn't bad. Death and rebirth isn't bad, right? This is the end of an era. Irreversible transformation. I genuinely think we're going to see a little bit of a rebrand when he comes back. It's going to be more simple, more spiritual, less of the jargon. If he can walk into the fire and consciously choose that like death and rebirth, he's going to be more powerful than ever. It's like transmuting all of this shit from this year into gold. There's a lot of potential there. I think we're going to see a little bit of a different Justin when he comes back. And I'm going to see if I can find my Oracle deck. 1 minute. All right. So I did find it. And it's my Angels and Ancestors deck. And I usually only I don't work with oracle decks very much, if I'm being honest. I tend to work with this deck more with my incredibly spiritual clients, and if we're looking for more of the esoteric meaning. Just going to pull. I'm big on animals as well in terms of, all right, let's just go through some of the things. Okay. The hunter, tracking down your fears and desires. What would we say? Some of his biggest fears are going to become his way to freedom. Autumn, releasing the old and the reset. So again, what are those fears that you've held? Well, you've gone through the worst of it. You were climbing the ladder. You want to be seen as a good director. You want to be seen as a good actor. Your movie was stolen from you. Blake is trashing you in the media. It's all been ripped away. Like, your worst fears have literally come true. Who are you beneath it? Release the old and offset and reset. The crow or raven, one of my favorites. Snake, shedding the old skin. I'm telling you, I really think there's going to be choose your path. Choose your path forward. I've been saying this. Oh, I think there's going to be a bit of a rebrand. Not a rebrand in terms of performative rebrand. Not a rebrand as in I have to do this to fix PR or anything like that. No. It's because he's faced his deepest fears. He knows what he desires moving forward. He's releasing the old, shedding the snake skin. One of the things to keep in mind with snakes as well, I say this with my clients often, is I have a bearded dragon, but snakes, lizards, they need to shed the skin to survive. So if you have a lizard that sheds their skin and they're not shedding it because they're unhealthy or they don't have what they need in their environment, it's called stuck shed, and they can lose limbs. They can lose their toes. They can lose their tail. They can die. So one of the things I say often with clients, and this is really symbolic, I think, for Justin right now, is, well, you can continue doing what you were doing, but you're going to be sacrificing your soul and what lights you up and what brings you health and vitality for external accolades, for external success, for external approval. And that's only going to last so long. All right. So that he's releasing the old, shedding the skin, choosing his own direction forward. Let's see what else we got. To do that, what does he have to do? Shift his perception of your greatest fears. They already happened. They came true. Now what? And stand his ground. I think stand his ground first and foremost for me. Oh, it's so funny. Stand his ground for me more than anything is on what's important. You have to stand your ground with yourself more than anything else, right? Stand your ground with yourself on what's important to you. But white buffalo calf woman has been coming up a lot. The peacekeeper. I'd encourage him to work with white buffalo calf woman. So a resolution, harmonious resolution, if is possible. I do think he's going to get a payout. I do think he's going to, like, quote unquote win, like even legally. But white buffalo calf woman is someone I would suggest he works with and be devoted and committed to the new direction. So, yep. It's exactly what we're seeing. He has to face the fears, and I think he has. He has to ground in what's important. I think he has. But then now you have to be committed to it, because it's easy. It is easy to say, oh yeah, I'm committed to this path, or I'm committed to doing this thing, or dust. Or, I went through this hard time, and it's easy in the fire to be like, oh my God, I commit to a new way forward. And then as soon as things lighten up, you're like, whatever. We do it. It's human nature. So he has to stay true to that. He has to stay determined within it. But anyway, that is what I have for you guys. What do you think is next for Justin? I'd love to hear from you guys. What do you think's next for him? I do think we're going to see him as like that hermit over the next year for many reasons. But what do you think's next? Oh, that's so funny. The lovers reversed. The lovers have always represented Blake and Ryan reversed. Yeah. You're going down in the sun for Justin. Upright. The sun's coming because there's going to be a judgment. I think he's getting a payout, guys. All right. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. What do you think's next for him? And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.